There are three different kinds of server-side tracking, each coming with their own pros and cons, designed to be used in different tracking scenarios. The most commonly used one is hybrid tracking. Hybrid tracking relies on tracking conversion events in the browser, sending them to an intermediary server, intermediary container, and then forwarding them to the destination like an ad platform or analytics system server side. If we are to look at the flow of data in hybrid tracking, it would usually contain a tracking code that runs inside the browser. So for example, if a browser has opened destination website, it will load tracking script, and a typical example of this is a Google Tag Manager. So it will load a GTM.js tracking script from what's called container or some kind of server that hosts tracking script. This tracking script will execute in the browser within the context of the main domain name of the website and send tracking event to the container. The container is a virtual machine that runs some kind of server-side tracking code that receives events from the browser, processes them, sometimes converts their format, and then forwards them forward to the destination, like an ad platform. So after some processing, it might send a conversion event to Facebook's conversion API, Google Analytics measurement protocol, and so on. So while those connections happen server-side, it's important to understand that this sort of separation between server-side and client-side happens here. So it's browser still responsible for tracking all of the events. And because the tracking code runs in the browser, it only has access to the data that's available in the browser. So any conversions that are sent, for example, to Facebook will have to be based entirely on what's available in the browser at the moment when the event is tracked, which applies two limitations to the tracking that relies on a hybrid tracking like this. It only can process the custom identifiers that are available in the browser in the moment of conversion. So for example, if there's no tracking cookie with a click identifier or browser identifier that were set after the initial ad click, after the initial visit to the landing page at the time of conversions, then the server-side tracking code implemented this way would not have access to sort of those cookies that are missing and would, as a result, send an incomplete attribution details. And the second limitation is it only can track events that happen in the browser. Even though you could send conversion events from somewhere else to it, they would suffer from a similar problem. They wouldn't have access to the details that Google Analytics or ad platforms would use to recognize their users natively, like ad click identifiers and browser identifiers. So that is usually a major limitation for using hybrid tracking in more complex funnels. However, it tends to work well for simple funnels where the conversion happens right away. Somebody coming to the website, purchasing once, straight away, it tracks all details and sends them to a server. Now, if you look into sort of more complex funnels, for example, any funnels that rely on upsells, subscriptions, trial period activations after some periods, any sales that are completed offline, either on a phone or through a CRM, otherwise are not really trackable efficiently by this hybrid tracking implementation, because it would not have access to the detailed information that has been present in the browser at the time of the original website visit. A more advanced tracking implementation that's used in such funnels called customer data platform-based tracking. The main difference between customer data platform approach to tracking and using hybrid tracking is the fact that the customer information is being persisted between different customer interactions and does not rely on the browser that much. This is achieved by using an intermediary database. Such database will record conversion details, visitor details at the time of initial visit and at the time of initial sign up or conversion to a lead, and then use those details to attribute any future conversions and build a complete picture of the customer journey, which is also used to send conversions to ad platforms, allowing them to recognize that all of these conversions that happen later on belong to the original customer who clicked one or several adverts beforehand. There's still a website, and there's still a website tracking that happens in the browser. The difference is it only relied upon to get the initial details about the customer. So commonly, it would record things like click identifier, email entered in lead form, and so on. So sometimes it also gets the session information like a Google Analytics client ID or any other cookies that have been sent in the browser. However, it's important to note that those details are often not being recorded and not needed. So, for example, if there's a landing page that has a lead form right as a landing page, in that case, it might not require setting up any cookies to track that, because the main purpose of browser tracking, client-side tracking in a customer data platform, is to associate the source of the visitor, like a click identifier, possibly UTM parameters, with the information that can identify a customer uniquely, like an email. And the big benefit of this is that information usually provided alongside with an explicit consent to process personal data. So, for example, acceptance of privacy policy on a sign-up is quite common. And this allows to make entire journey much more user-friendly and much less reliant on GDPR screens, on tracking consent screens. So this data, this customer data, are then recorded in database provided by customer data platform. And it starts to build customer profile. So in this case, it has received a click identifier that was set by an ad platform and initially passed to a website as a URL parameter. It associates it with an email, and that would normally be a lot of other different parameters like browser, details, IP address, and so on. These details aren't really crucial for attribution, because the attribution rests on having that association of the initial website visit with the customer email and other personal information. So when a conversion then happens in another platform, for example, it might be a completed purchase on a website later on, or it might be a payment from a payment system, or it might be an e-commerce conversion, it then gets sent to customer data platform as well. And this conversion would typically have a customer email address or another identifier, or other customer conversion details. It might have additional customer details like name, address, but crucially, there's a value and usually some description of items that have been purchased. When a customer data platform receives that conversion, it then associates the email with the existing customer record. And effectively, from looking at this from a perspective of the ad tracking, it uses the email then to retrieve the click identifier or other identifier that is used by ad platforms to recognize who the customer is, and similarly identifier that's used by Google Analytics to recognize who the website visitor was. And because it's now attributed, the conversion is now attributed to a specific identifier that would be understood by the desired destination, the customer data platform forms a conversion event in an extended form that has more details than both browser at the time of the first visit, browser at the time of actually making this purchase and more information than the actual backend platforms that doesn't normally have a knowledge about the source of the visitor. So all that information is being grouped in the conversion event. So it will typically have click ID most crucially. Click ID alone allows customer data platform to attribute conversion to the source without having to guess, make any guesses from browser details or other customer private information. So it will include click identifier. Often it will include additional match parameters like an email, conversion value, and so on. And this gets sent to the ad platform. So compared to the sort of other approach to the tracking we've discussed previously, it obviously looks more complicated. But the main difference would be that the data that has been included in the event being sent to the ad platform is much richer than what's been available in the browser when using hybrid tracking. One specific example where customer data platform tracking is very efficient is tracking conversions that happen on a third-party platform. For example, checkout in payment system, checkout in a booking platform, something like this. That runs on its own domain name and often doesn't have ability to place tracking code like Stripe, or lets place tracking code but executes it in a sandboxed container without real access to any tracking identifiers that might have been present, might have been available to the main website. Customer data platform would record click identifier alongside with the identifier such as some sort of session identifier that refers to the checkout session that's been instantiated in a third-party platform. The visitor then navigates to that platform, such as buy.stripe.com. And this session identifier that's been assigned by the browser is being passed as a URL parameter to the third-party platform. So when a conversion finally finishes successfully in a third-party platform, it then sends a webhook back to customer data platform that similarly, instead of relying on email, it relies on that session identifier, but also will have an email for enhanced matching, value, items, and so on. And then instead of looking up the customer record by the email, customer data platform would look up the customer record by session identifier, link the session identifier clicked on the website initially with session identifier sent by a third-party platform, and form the conversion that will be recognized by our platform without having to rely on guessing who the customer is by the email or by the browser details alone. So far, both of the types of tracking we've discussed, hybrid tracking and a customer data platform tracking, relied on using browser tracking to track at least some portion of the customer's journey. In case of customer data platforms, there's a possibility of use server-side tracking entirely. It's not used very often because typically customer data platform approach to server-side tracking is sufficient to track vast majority of conversions, vast majority of customer journeys in most of the websites. However, the possibility to eliminate a client-side tracking entirely from tracking with a customer data platform is there. Instead of relying on using client-side code to track initial conversion in the browser, this can be implemented server-side and talk to a customer data platform. This approach currently isn't used very often. And the main reason is, even with the latest changes and differences in how third-party cookies are tracked and how browsers limit duration of the browser cookies, it's typically possible to use a customer data platform tracking alone, combined tracking that uses browser tracking to record landing page views and leads or signups, and server-side tracking to collect the server-side conversion events like payments and subscriptions. However, the possibility is there. So if one of the sort of main future-proof considerations when implementing customer data platform is it allows to implement tracking that does not rely on any JavaScript or any browser code entirely, if such need would arise in the future.